and welcome to the University of Nottingham PGCEi webinar. My name is Helen Spiropoulos and I'm the Admissions Manager at Stafford Associates. And joining me this evening all the way from the university is Dr. Rupert. Good evening to you, Dr. Rupert.
Evening, Helen, and good evening to all the candidates out there. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking here on my right-hand side and I can see quite a lot of you have joined us, so welcome. How we are going to conduct the webinar this evening is I'm briefly going to introduce you to Stafford and what our function is, and I'm then going to hand you over to Dr. Rupert, who's going to chat about the program. And right at the end of the presentation, we will be opening up the question box, which you'll probably see on the right-hand side of your screen, and you're very welcome to type out any questions that you'd like to ask Dr. Rupert or myself. What I am going to be doing is looking at these questions quite carefully because a lot of them are identical, so I will be grouping these questions together. Okay, so let's get started. Who is Stafford? Well, Stafford was established in 1993 and we are a resource centre for distance learning education in the Middle East, and we're now currently the resource centre for 5 UK universities, one of which is University of Nottingham. Now, our function here is to assist you throughout your application process. So the mere fact that you're here this evening with us means that you have already been in touch with one of our experienced academic consultants. And we also do offer some administrative support as well. We offer a variety of programs ranging from certificates to diplomas, bachelors, MBAs, right through until doctorates. So we really do have programs from all universities for your personal as well as professional needs. I'm now going to hand you over to Dr. Rupert, who's going to chat about the program, and I'll join you towards the end of the webinar. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Helen. Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming along to the webinar this evening. Hopefully what we talk about will be useful for you and help you to make a good decision. And as Helen said, there's an opportunity at the end to ask any questions and we'll do our best to answer those for you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the University of Nottingham and the School of Education here to just give you a very, very brief bit of background and context. And then I'm going to talk about the PGCEi course, and we'll talk about what it's for, what it's aiming to do, how it's structured, what it covers, and some of the benefits of it, and then finish up with some details about how to get yourself ready and apply for the course. So I hope that's going to be the right kind of coverage for you. So the University of Nottingham, lots of people will know a bit about the university perhaps. It's one of the Russell Group of universities in England, which is the sort of elite group of research-oriented universities. So it's a well-known university in general and always quite highly ranked internationally as well. And it's a university that is thought of as being, as you can see from the quotation here, very international, global university. So we have a great many students from all over the world who actually come here to Nottingham to study. And we also have campuses in China and Malaysia. And then we have courses like the PGCEi that we're talking about today, which span the world and involve us traveling around to see people in all sorts of territories. So very international university. And as I said, it's a university that's well known for research and being at the forefront of things, but also for teaching excellence. So we have an award system in this country now of gold, silver, bronze for teaching quality, and the university is rated as a gold standard teaching provider as well. So all of that is a bit about the university generally. And then the School of Education here is a very long established department. It's been doing education here in one form or another for over 100 years. And as a subject, this is a particularly highly rated department, again, going back to those kind of rankings. At the moment, in terms of research in the UK, this would be the 3rd ranked university for education research. and 8th for education as a subject. So what that means is you've got a team of tutors and you've got materials that are really representing the cutting edge of what's going on. You've got some really well-known names who are published in the field, who've contributed to the course and who work on the course, and you have that kind of seal of approval and that quality about what's going on here. So this is a well-known place to study education, in short. So we have all sorts of education courses here in the department, including training teachers to work locally in the UK, lots of international work on our MA in education, doctoral work, all kinds of things. And within that portfolio of courses, we have the PGCE International, or PGCEi for short. So this is a course that's been around for 10 or 11 years now and has been growing steadily over that time, from very small beginnings to a position now where we have usually around something like 900 or so students at any one time studying this course at different places all over the world. So it's a course that is universal all over the world, but we go and visit particular cohorts in different locations, and we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. So at one time or another, we've had well over 20 different places in the world where cohorts meet, and the UAE is one of those places. So this is a well-established, growing course, and one that's increasingly well known around the world. And it's also a course that has just been revamped. So after a number of years, every several years, we will look at the course and we want to completely update the materials, make sure everything's reflecting new developments and so on. So just only a couple of months ago, we relaunched with a new and updated version of the course. So the course that you'd be embarking on would be very, very new. It's the same aims, the same coverage, and all of the same qualities people know of the course over the years gone by, but completely updated. So the readings, the video material, and all sorts of things in the course are new as of this autumn. So it's a great time to be getting involved with the course. So joining the PGCEi means really joining a great big family of educators around the world, which is quite exciting. So in terms of what the course is, as it says here, it's a master's level course. So it's an academic program of study at master's level and leads to a certificate in education at master's level. It's really important to note that it's not a course that involves any practical teaching element. So we don't come and see you teach in school, and we don't have a system where we require you to be mentored or assessed in school. So this is not any kind of assessment of your teaching practice in school. And as such, it doesn't offer any kind of license to teach or qualified teacher status or any other similar license. Those kind of requirements, of course, vary all over the world, and different countries, different states within countries, even different school systems have varying requirements around the globe. So there isn't really a one-size-fits-all practical qualification anyway. So it's really important to be clear, it's an academic program of study and it's not a license to teach. And you would need to just check locally wherever you're intending to work about local licensing requirements for actually sort of working in school. So it's, as it mentions here, a program of professional enrichment. And the third bullet point here talks about focusing on looking at your individual practice through theory. So what we're aiming to do is have an impact on your practice, but not through giving you tips for the classroom and coming to observe lessons. We're doing this through opening up your mind to a range of different perspectives within education. And whenever I do these talks, I try and give my own experience of this, because my background before working for the university, which I've done for some time now, was as a teacher in school. And when I was doing that role, I did a master's level course myself. I did an MA in education while I was teaching in school. And it absolutely enriched what I did. It had a huge impact on my practice. It caused me to question lots of assumptions that I had, lots of practices that I had, and it really got me to look at what I was doing day to day with fresh eyes, and undoubtedly made me a better teacher in the classroom. So it will have that kind of impact on practice because it will challenge your thinking and open your thinking. And also it broadens your horizons to different systems of schooling. So even within a region like the UAE or the Middle East more broadly, which is what we're looking at with this cohort, there will be all sorts of different school systems. Some of you may be working in British curriculum, American curriculum, IB curriculum, SABIS curriculum schools, local curriculum, government schools, all kinds of settings. So rather than get ourselves just into one way of thinking, a course like this is great professional development because it opens your mind to all kinds of other possibilities. So very good for the career in that sense, in terms of your awareness as well. Just going back to the top point on the slide, you can see there in bold writing, it says blended learning. What we mean by that is that this is a course that blends face-to-face teaching with distance learning online. So we don't call it a distance learning course because it does have this face-to-face teaching element. So what that involves is for every cohort, a team of tutors will come out to the region, in this case to the UAE, and twice in the year, we'll have face-to-face workshops with you. So what happens is I will come out for this region. I was over in the UAE in October, so just a matter of weeks ago, and 5 of us came out to start off a new cohort because we start cohorts twice a year. And so we met all of the students right at the beginning of the course. So all of the students I'm going to be working with personally, I've met face-to-face. We always have those face-to-face workshops, which are compulsory as part of the course over a weekend. So nobody has to come out of school or seek permission to come away from work. And we have a weekend at the beginning of the course, which sets you up with all of the aims and how the course works, lots of the big ideas, lots of chances to ask all the questions you might have and to meet your tutor. And then about halfway through the course, we have a second workshop where again, over a weekend, we come out again and you get to meet your tutor again and work together. The beauty of those kind of workshops is not only are you meeting your tutor, and it's great for us as well. We always really enjoy coming and seeing all of our students and getting to know them personally. But you also meet all of the peers on the course. So we have large cohorts in this region, but we split them down into separate tutor groups of around about 20 or just below sometimes. So you'll get to know in particular your group of students with your tutor really well in those workshops. And I was just talking about the different school systems and the diverse settings that people work in. So imagine being in that room, having those sessions, having a lot of discussions around big ideas in education, but being with people who come from a range of different countries in terms of their own educational backgrounds. Also, people who are working in a range of different countries in the region currently, people who are working in different roles. So secondary teachers, primary teachers, teaching assistants, people teaching kindergarten age, other educators working in other capacities in school settings. All of that diversity and the diversity of school types that we mentioned about, British curriculum or international baccalaureate schools and so on. And really getting to know things from all of those perspectives and having that kind of networking opportunity is a one-off chance. It's not something you get to do normally in your education career. So those face-to-face workshops have a lot of different purposes, and that networking with your peers is definitely a big part of this. So thinking about how the course is put together and structured, you, in the course of a year, effectively about 10 months of study time, will complete 3 modules. The modules are equally weighted, 20 credits each, so you're building up to getting 60 credits for your certificate. They're compulsory modules, but within each of those modules, you have a lot of opportunity to choose, first of all, to choose a lot of the units that you pick to study, particularly in the second and third modules, but also with your assignments and all the work that you do to tailor that to your own setting. So if you're a secondary geography teacher, then you're going to really be writing all of your assignments and locating all of that work in the context of secondary geography. If you're a special educational needs teaching assistant, learning support assistant, you're going to be writing probably from that perspective. If you're a primary teacher, again, you're going to be writing about that kind of context. So all of the assignments are written, as you can see here, a 4,000 word assignment. They're all written based on your own context. You're going to relate the ideas of the module to your own context, and therefore you have this sort of personalized journey. So we talk about how each learner is really creating their own blend through the course, because you're all coming from different perspectives and you're bringing to bear all of that and making your own personal choices through the course. So although the modules are compulsory, everyone's journey through them is quite unique. I mentioned about the assignments. It talks here about a 4,000 word assignment. It's worth bearing in mind that for each of the modules in this new version of the course, there are actually two options. So in each case, you can choose to do a written assignment, 4,000 word assignment, or you can choose to do a presentation-based assignment, which usually will involve some kind of videoing of a presentation, or perhaps videoing of some classroom practice, and then you providing a voiceover. Those two different sorts of assignment are judged against the same criteria, which we talked to you about in detail at the workshops, and they're judged at the same level, and they have to do effectively the same job. But we really think it's important to be able to offer two different types of medium for you to express your understanding. Some people prefer the written structure, others prefer to do something through a presentation. So there are those two options for every assignment. You can see here from the middle bullet point the three module titles here. And the idea of these three modules is they take you on a journey, which should feel like a logical progression. So the first module is about educational aims and values. And so this is really asking the question, what is education actually for? I wonder how often we think about that when we go to a school and we go to work every day. Have we stopped to think, what's the purpose of this education? Is it all about just getting grades and getting qualifications? Or is it about developing each person as a unique individual? Is it about actually making better citizens for the world? Is it about changing the world somehow? In some ways, probably all of those things, but different school systems and different individual schools and even individual teachers will have a different mix and a different balance. So we look a lot at what education is all about in Module 1, and you can see that it says in international contexts. So this is specifically thinking about the world of international schooling and coming at it from that point of view. And one of the big developments in the latest update of the course has been to make all of the materials even more international. So there are influences and readings and practices from all over the world in the materials that you work through. So having thought about what education is for in Module 1, Module 2 is all about, well, so how does this work? So we look at how learning takes place. We look at a lot of different theories of learning, some of them classic theories that have been around for decades or longer, others that are very up to the minute and drawing on the latest cognitive science and neuroscience influences. So we look at how learners learn and the differences in those perspectives, which again can really challenge some of your thinking and get you to question some of the things that you take for granted. And we look at teaching. We look at how teaching takes place and some of the different aspects of teaching practice that we all need. So in that module, we'll include things like students' behaviour, special educational needs, working collaboratively, working with learners who have English as an additional or other language, and those kind of things. And then module 3, having thought about what education's for, how people learn and how therefore we teach them, we get to a logical kind of conclusion, which is about how do we know that someone has learned something? So module 3 is all about understanding, learners or students understanding. And we look at this through you doing an inquiry project. So you do a very small scale inquiry project, because it's still just leading to a 4,000 word or equivalent assignment, where you pick an aspect of your practice, again, that kind of personalization of the course, and you come up with your own inquiry question in collaboration with your tutor who gives you advice, and you find out about your students' understanding of a particular concept that's relevant in your practice. So thereby you've gone through this whole sort of journey through the course, which makes a lot of sense. And at all stages, you're relating that to your own particular educational setting. So in doing these 60 credits, what you're getting is your certificate in education. But this is also not just the end of something, but it's possibly the beginning of something, because that's equivalent, that certificate, to a third of the MA in education. So if you want to continue further study, not necessarily immediately, but anytime within 10 years, if you want to use those credits, you can bring those into our MA education, and you can work through the other 2/3 of the course, knowing that you've got a third of it done, paid for, and in the bag already. And we've got various MA pathways you can see here. Some of the more specialist ones you're only going to be bringing 30 credits into, like the MA special needs, for example. But the MA education, the more general route, which you can do flexibly, and you can do it online wherever you are in the world, or face-to-face here, of course, you can bring your 60 credits in. All of the materials that you need for the course are provided for you. So this is a really important point. You're not going to be expected to go out and buy books or to be able to get to university libraries necessarily. So we have our virtual learning environment, our platform called Moodle, which lots of universities use, so you may have come across it. And embedded in there, in your modules, is everything that you need. So as you work through each unit within a module, because the modules are split into different units, you'll find a whole set of readings to work through. You'll find lots of video material to look at, to bring things to life, and also some audio material, as well as links to various online sources. In addition, what you've got at the end of every unit is you've got further reading, so you can then pursue things that are of interest or relevance to you in greater depth, which is really important for your assignments. And all of that is linked through to our university library here. So most of the further reading is in the form of electronic books. So as part of your course that you've paid for, you have access for free to the university's e-library. You can read those e-books wherever you are, and you've also got access to all of the e-journals that the university subscribes to as well. So there's a vast collection of readings there, and that's all there for you, and you can navigate through that very, very easily. And the other point at the bottom here about how we work through the course is that you've got your individual tutor. I think this is a real strength, this idea that we come and we meet you at the beginning of the course and midway through. So already my group from October, from a few weeks ago, that started off, have just submitted a piece of work. And as I've been looking at some of those today, it's really nice that I can picture who these people really are. And in many cases, we've had some dialogue by email and been sharing ideas already between us. So we've got that contact. For people that want some additional support, or for people who've had any kind of struggles, we can also, of course, have online tutorial support. Depending on where you are, that might use Skype or it might be in some other way, but we can have tutorial support where we actually speak to each other as well. And built into the course, there's a number of group forums. So what that means is at various points as you work through the materials in each module, you're asked to post some thoughts to a forum online, and all of your fellow students will also be posting their ideas, and you can get into discussions there online in the forum about some of these ideas. So that's another way of building on that peer support angle that we mentioned that you get from the workshops. So we're going to turn now to thinking about how we get onto the course here. So you can see here the basic entry requirements. So this is a postgraduate level course, it's a master's level course. So that means the standard entry requirement would be your bachelor's degree. And you can see here, normally at least second class honours level. Occasionally we have people who have not got the standard entry requirements, but they have maybe other qualifications that may be equivalent, or they've got extensive professional experience over many, many years, and all sorts of other qualifications perhaps relating to that. If you feel that you might be in that category, then we do look at what we'd call non-standard applications on a case-by-case basis. So still worth talking to the academic consultants at Stafford, and they can guide you through that process. You also see here that there's an English language requirement here. So if English is not your first language, then there's an IELTS level there, because of course the course is taught in English, and we want you to be able to access the materials and all of the things I've mentioned and feel confident about that. I guess this is fairly clear, but because the course relies so much on those materials online, you need access to internet, and be fairly clear about having that throughout the course. It also says here you need to be an established educator. So people often ask what that means, and really it's a very broad definition. So you may be a teacher in school, of course. You may be some other kind of education professional, like a learning support assistant in school. That's absolutely fine. Or you may work in some other role in education. The materials we have and the course we have is geared up to schooling in the broadest sense. So full age range of schooling and a full range of roles. Some of the modules, particularly, well, really in modules 2 and 3, you're going to be required to draw on some experience from the classroom. You're going to be required to talk about examples of things that are going on in the classroom and examples of your own practice. So particularly in modules 2 and 3, you need access to the classroom. So sometimes we have people who are not employed in school currently, but they are volunteering and working in a voluntary capacity in school part-time. That can work as well, and that's okay, as long as you know you have that guaranteed access to a classroom and you can work with some of the students there, because that's going to be required for some of those modules. So there's a list here of things that you'll need to do to apply, and Stafford's academic consultants will be really good at guiding you through this process. So they will really help with all of this. The things that I tend to pick out are to do with the reference and the personal statement. So with your reference, try and make sure that your referee is somebody who knows you professionally or academically and can really talk knowledgeably about how well suited you'd be for a course of study like this. So rather than just perhaps a very general character reference, if it's somebody who can talk about your attributes and how that's going to help you to succeed on a course like this, and therefore it's somebody who you've given information to about the course and they know what they're writing about, that is really helpful. And in the personal statement, the more you can talk about your motivation for doing this course, what you hope to get out of it, also your background professionally in terms of education experience, and any transferable skills you have. That's really useful, because lots of people come onto the course who've had other careers in the past. We have all sorts of people who've worked in all kinds of professions, and that works really well, and often they don't realize how transferable their skills are. So of course things like being a good communicator and a good time manager, all of these kind of generic skills are worth flagging up as well. So I mentioned earlier that we start off in this region, we start off 2 cohorts every year. So we start off a cohort every October, beginning of October, and every March. So we've just begun our October cohort, so that means the next cohort is in March. So you can see the program begins 1st of March. Places are always really limited because we want to keep the right tutor to student ratio. We have a strict limit on places. So it's really worth getting your application in as soon as you can in every case. And for this March cohort, ideally we want people to be getting applications in by about December the 14th. So before people disappear for Christmas, for example, doing that by that point is really important. It's not necessarily going to be an absolute cutoff, but that's the date that you really should be aiming for if at all possible. So the workshops for that next cohort are shown here. They are compulsory, they are part of the course. So if you're not able, if you're looking at that March date, for example, and you're thinking, I know I'm not going to be able to be around that weekend, what you would need to do is really defer your entry to start the following October, because those workshops are built into the course. You have to attend as part of the course. So you have the dates there for the next cohort, and you also have the fee information there, and all of that again is going to be handled and processed through Stafford, so the academic consultants there can give you some advice on that. So I can see that Helen has just popped back onto the screen, so that must mean it's time for questions and answers. So hello, Helen.
Hello, and great. Thank you so much, Dr. Rupert. Very informative. And I can see that some people have already started posting questions. I have started grouping them. There's about 3 or 4 questions related to IELTS. If I do not have IELTS, is there any other form of an English assessment?
Not normally. I mean, this could fall into our looking at applications on a case-by-case basis, and sometimes you know, if you've been, for instance, through education in English at university, and it's at a university that is recognized here, that might exempt you from the IELTS requirement, but generally it's the IELTS test that's going to count. But if you're in doubt, what I'd say is rather than just sort of walk away, talk to your academic consultant at Stafford. If necessary, they can liaise here with our admissions office, and we'll be able to get you an answer, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I do see a question from Hent with regards to one of your elements in your current IELTS exam. Do get in touch with us, and we can actually advise you on the scoring for each element in your IELTS. Okay, and we have quite a few questions that have come through with the actual workshops. I know you have said it's compulsory to actually attend these. One of the questions that has come through is, in the event that I can only attend one of the days, will I still need to defer my studies?
Well, if you know in advance at this stage or before the course begins that you can only attend one of those weekends, one of the workshops, then yes, you would need to defer because it's a compulsory part of the course. The only exceptions really are if you begin the course and you've come to the first workshop and then something very drastic happens midway through the year. And of course, things in life sometimes do happen. If it's something very significant that was completely unforeseeable and you have some evidence around that, then what you would need to do at that stage is you would need to go through an official process here at the university where you fill out some documentation, you upload some evidence, and you essentially proved to a panel here at the university why you weren't able to attend the second workshop. And in that case, they may make a decision that this is something you can compensate for in other ways, perhaps through demonstrating some catch-up work or liaising with your tutor in certain ways. But that would have to be evidenced, and it would have to be something that was unforeseen at the start of the course. So really the message is, you know, we can try and accommodate exceptional circumstances that crop up during the course, but if you know in advance that either of those workshops is going to be an issue, then you need to wait and just join the next cohort, which is good that we have 2 a year anyway.
Excellent. And just further on these workshops, I see questions on where they're going to be conducted. Our workshops are conducted in Ajman. So for people that are traveling, that need to fly in, we do advise that you come through at least the day before or the night before. Do not try and fly in on the day. I know in some cases students cannot get any flights. The workshops do start at 9 o'clock. So we do advise that you try and come in very early in the morning or the evening before. Okay, so just take that as some advice from us as well as from the university.
And just on building on that point about the venue, we've worked really hard, you know, with Stafford over the years to look at various venues, and we have a great venue at the moment that we use, and it really enables us to have that kind of networking feel to the weekends that we want, because we can have a large cohort that's all in one area of the venue. And even though you split off into your 5 or 4, depending on the size of cohorts, subgroups, you get to mingle with all kinds of people, and it's a really top class venue that works really well for us.
Okay, and for people that do not have a bachelor degree, how do I get into the program?
Okay, so this would really fall under that heading of looking at an individual case. And so, you know, the best idea is that you would need to make a strong case for yourself by demonstrating and convincing the admissions team here of your other equivalent qualifications you may have. This is a postgraduate level program of study. So, you know, one thing that people are going to be looking at closely, therefore, is what's your readiness to work at postgraduate level if you haven't already worked at undergraduate or bachelor's level. So any evidence that you've got of equivalent academic working is really important. And of course, evidence of professional qualifications or professional experiences that you think stand you in good stead. So there isn't a simple answer to say exactly what would be equivalent. It is an individual, it's looked at on an individual basis. But I think the more you can think about what we would be looking for in terms of the level of academic work and rigor at that point, and the way you can demonstrate that in a different way, and that again goes back also to your referee. If your reference can also back that up and talk about evidence of you doing things that seem to fit well with that, that's going to strengthen that application as well. So if you think you have a good case in that sense, I would definitely urge you to apply, and we'll have a look at that, and we'll see what we can do.
Good. And I'm just going to answer about 3 questions again, just on IELTS. Very important that it has to have a final score of 6.5, and it has to be an academic IELTS. The university will not accept any other IELTS, for example, the general. They will not accept that. So it has to be the academic, and you must have an overall score of 6.5. Do get in touch with your academic consultant to give you more information on that. Okay, and this is a very interesting question. Is it possible for me to take this program if I'm working a 9-hour day? Is it advisable? What is your opinion?
So I'd say yes, that's possible. Everybody's working situation is different, of course, and everybody has other commitments in terms of family or other things in life. So it's a personal decision, of course, based on all of those things. But what we know from experience from doing this year after year after year is a great many people on the course, probably the majority of people on the course, are working full-time as educators. And it's an intense and challenging period, having a program of study on top of that, but it is something that people manage to do. So I think the answer would be yes, definitely. Going back to I was talking in the presentation really about my own experiences of studying at master's level while working in school. So in my case, doing an MA in education, that was a 3-year program. And that was also full-time working in school, working, you know, probably more than 9 hours for most of the time. So it's certainly it's not an easy thing necessarily, but it's something that you certainly can do, and we know it's doable. And one of the things that we do at the workshop, because we know that people will have an understandable concern about the workload, at the workshops we tend to bring a past student back at the first workshop, somebody from usually the previous year's cohort, who can actually stand up in front of all of the new group and really talk about how they had the same fears, but how they've managed to work through their time and to find the scope for doing that. So I think as long as you feel ready for that sort of intense year, and you feel in general in life, you know, you're at a point where you're ready for doing that, it certainly is something that's doable on top of that full-time kind of role, yeah.
Okay, and we've got quite a few questions with regards to QTS. I've got lots of years of experience, lots of teaching. I am aware that this program does not offer QTS, but how can I get my QTS after finishing this course? Do you have a brief idea on that?
Well, so one thing we need to remember is that QTS is an English qualification specifically, or for England and Wales. So it's not necessarily an international qualification, but if you're thinking of QTS as being something important because perhaps one day you want to come and work in the UK, for example, then usually people will have to go down a route which is called assessment only QTS. And what that means is if you've been teaching for at least 2 years across a range of different age groups, then you might be eligible for applying for an assessment only form of QTS. And that means that you would be assessed on the job as a teacher or as an unqualified teacher, just purely through compiling a portfolio and being assessed by observations of your teaching just in the course of 1 term of work. So that's not something that is offered by University of Nottingham, but there are providers all over the country here who do offer that. And if you just went and Googled assessment only QTS, you'll find lots of information online from the government here about how it works, what the entry requirements are, and how to find a provider in your area. So that assessment only route is usually going to be what you'd need to do. And typically at the moment, maybe things will change in future, but at the moment that normally involves being back in this country and being assessed for a term here.
Okay, and quite a few questions on the bachelor's degrees that you're currently holding. The questions are, if I do not have a bachelor degree in education, but they are in a different specialization, will I still be accepted on the program?
Yes, definitely, that's no problem at all. It's we don't specify what your bachelor degree has to be in. Some people will have a degree perhaps in education in some form, but I would say the vast majority don't. So it doesn't matter at all. It's just that you've studied at that level, at bachelor's level before. You'll find that some subjects that you might have studied, you might find quite a seamless transition. If you've studied in humanities or social sciences, you might find the style of studying very familiar. If you've worked maybe more in the sciences, mathematics, it might be quite different. But any subject that you've done at that level is absolutely fine.
Okay, and if I want to go directly into the master's program and not start the PGCE, what do I actually need to get into your master's program?
So you could apply for the MA education without doing the PGCEi, of course, if that was what you're interested in. And but again, it's a postgraduate level qualification, so you need your bachelor's degree, undergraduate qualification. And what I'd recommend is if you go and just have a look for the University of Nottingham and look at the website and look for MA education, what you'll see there is a whole range of different options in terms of pathways, but also the entry requirements. If there's any problem finding that, I'm sure if you contact Stafford, they can put you in touch with me and I can direct you more generally.
Okay. And with regards to the hotel, I'll just answer those questions very briefly. Yes, the hotel that we have these workshops is in Ashman. As soon as you become a student through Stafford, we'll be able to send you all the details on this hotel, how to go about booking your accommodation. Please note that any travel arrangements, visa arrangements is actually up to you. It is not included in the fees. Okay, so just take note of that. And with regards to the fees, I can see some questions on scholarships. We do not offer any scholarships for this program. However, we do have a very, very flexible payment monthly plan. So please get in touch with your academic consultant to be able to assist you in that regard. Okay. Right, and in your opinion, what is the difference between a CELTA and the PGCEi, and which one do you recommend?
What was it? So can you just repeat the first part of that, Helen? Sorry.
What is the difference between CELTA and the PGCEi, and which one do you recommend?
So the CELTA is, as I understand, it's not something we are running here, but it's an English language teaching qualification. So the PGCEi is a much more general qualification. So this is about being an educator in all settings. So as explained before, you can tailor this to your own role. And if your role is an English language teaching role, then that would work absolutely fine. And I would say, of course, CELTA is likely to be more specific in terms of language and so on, but the PGCEi is something where I think you've got a lot more transferable and general understanding of being an educator and education more broadly. So that's transferable to other contexts, so other forms of teaching, other settings, and indeed internationally. So I think the key difference there is just that one is a very specific form of learning, and one is much more generic and transferable.
Okay, and with regards to the assessments, I can see that there are only 3 modules, so therefore I'm assuming there's only 3 assessments. If I happen to fail any of these assessments, do I have to submit another one, or can I just do a presentation?
So there are 3 modules, and in each module you submit something that we call process work, which is really just a summary of some of the learning that you've done as you work through the module, and that's just assessed on a pass-fail basis. It's not graded. That's really quite a light touch step. It's a very, very small piece of work just to demonstrate you've gone through the materials. That builds up in each module to the main assessed piece of work, which is the written piece or the presentation. So if you were to fail your assignment, then you would have an opportunity to resubmit. Whether you've done the written piece or the presentation, just the same, you have the opportunity to resubmit. And in doing that, you'd have the benefit of detailed feedback that everybody gets anyway from their tutor. So whatever grade you get, you're going to have some really comprehensive feedback to help you move forwards. But in addition, if you have failed and you're resubmitting your work, then you'll have usually you would have a tutorial with your tutor, and your tutor is going to go through in detail the things that you need to put right, so that you're not in any doubt about what you need to do, and you have a really clear set of almost, perhaps 4 or 5 bullet point things that you need to address. So you're very much structured through that process if you do find yourself in a position of resubmitting.
Okay, and one of the questions is, do you have a cohort in India in the event that I cannot attend the cohort in the UAE?
There is a cohort in India, yep. So we have a cohort that meets in Bangalore. So if you're interested in that, then if you went to University of Nottingham website and look for PGCEi, then it shows you all the venues around the world, and you could look at the Indian cohort if that's of interest to you. They'll be following exactly the same course, all the same materials, and they just have their face-to-face workshops in India instead.
Okay, very important that these workshops are not held in your own country. Okay, in the Middle East, they are held in Ajman, so it is expected that you would need to fly into Ajman. Okay, because I can see quite a lot of questions asking if it's going to be in their own country. Okay, and with regards, I'm just going to answer this question because there's quite a few questions with regards to whether it's recognized locally by your ministry. You need to get in touch with your local ministries to actually ascertain if it is. The reason we say this is that every single country has got their own rules and regulations, and those rules and regulations do tend to change. So please do get in touch with the relevant ministries to see if it's really something that you are looking for and it is locally recognized. Okay, is your materials, your study materials, printable? I do like to print out material and highlight and study in that way. Are they printable?
Yeah, in most cases, what you see on our VLE or virtual learning environment as you work through will be some screens that you do read through, which give you the basic journey through each unit within the module. But then the actual detailed readings, which would be from particular authors which have been selected for you, they tend to be linked, and usually a PDF document or similar would pop up. So you could copy and print those, and then of course the further readings, which are through the e-library, you could also print out portions of those. So yes, if you prefer reading longer extracts on paper as in hard copy, then that should be okay.
Will the degree certificate state online distance learning?
No, it doesn't state that. So it would just state the qualification, and I believe it says part-time, but it doesn't say online or distance learning. No.
Okay, and very important for me to understand is that I do want to get into this program, but I'm currently a full-time housewife, and I don't have a current job, is a teaching job. Is this imperative for this program?
Well, you could be a volunteer in school, so it really depends on your family circumstances, of course. But if you were able to go into school at certain times of the year and volunteer, and that school would allow you to do bits of work with students, you could do a little bit of teaching, perhaps with a small group. And for the third module, where we're investigating students' understanding of a concept, you could perhaps do some research, an interview, or observe a small group, for example. If you had access to a classroom on that sort of basis as a volunteer, then that would be a possibility, and you could certainly work through the course, and that would be feasible for you. But you do need that school access on a reasonably regular basis through most of the course.
Okay, and how many hours a day should I be dedicating to this program? I just need to make sure that I'm committed and I will actually get the most out of this program.
Well, when we break down the hours per module and we then try and work out hours per week, I think on average we would say it's around about the sort of 12 hours a week mark. That's going to fluctuate, of course, for different people who work in different ways and different periods of time. There's often, of course, a big surge of work before a deadline, and then maybe there's a quieter week after that. But on average, about 12 hours a week. So some people work a little bit every night or at some point in the day, and that works for them. Other people save it up and perhaps just work really hard through one day at the weekend. And there's no right and wrong about that. It's up to you. But that's about the level of work that we would say on average people would need to be bearing in mind.
If I start my program in March of 2020, when is the graduation? Which month would I be graduating?
Well, graduation happens twice a year in Nottingham for all courses. So it's always about sort of which is the next ceremony for you. So if you were doing the program starting in March and you were finishing your studies and probably handing in your final work around about January time, which is then marked, then your next ceremony would actually be in July. So if you wanted to come along and actually attend graduation in this country, which is always great, and we always welcome people from all over the world for that, that would be your next ceremony. But you can get your results before that. And there is a process whereby if you can't come to the ceremony, and of course the majority of people it's not really feasible to come, then you can graduate, as we call it, in absentia, which just means that sometime, maybe usually a couple of months before that ceremony, you can receive your certificate and you have graduated, but you haven't had to attend the ceremony.
Okay, and for one or two of the students that have just come in late into the webinar, it's important that you have a 6.5 IELTS score. Okay, the university will not accept a 6.0 or a 5.5. It needs to be 6.5. Okay, I do have 26 years of teaching experience. And again, in your opinion, do I need to really submit an IELTS? My English is perfect. and I'm in a high position in education, do I really need to submit this IELTS?
Well, it's going to come down again to your individual case here, so I can't really say this conclusively here. And it's also going to depend on where you were educated and the language you were educated in and your background there. So I think the best thing to do is just to talk to Stafford's consultant locally with you, and they can liaise with our admissions team and advise you a bit more specifically on that.
Okay. And I want to be a teacher in international schools and basically teaching geography. How will this program actually assist me in getting to that position?
Okay, so just to recap, this isn't going to give you that license to teach and necessarily make you into what we call a qualified teacher, wherever that might be in the world. What it is going to do very well for you, though, is it's going to focus your learning on education in a distinctly international school context. So the course is all about all of the principles of education, but seen through the perspective of international schooling specifically. And I was saying earlier on that one of the big features of the update to the course that's just happened is to make the course even more geared towards international schools and international forms of education. So it's going to give you a really good grounding there. It's not going to be going specifically into anything related to teaching geography, but that's where you're going to bring your personalization of the course to bear. So you can focus your examples and all of your assignments on the teaching of geography, if that's what you're interested in, and you can draw on those examples and you can follow up opportunities and avenues through the units of study that relate to that focus for you. So in that way, I think it'll be a really useful background, as long as you realize that it's not a practical qualification and it's not going to be giving you material about geography specifically.
Okay, and how are the assignments actually graded? Do we get percentages, or is it ABC grading?
So the assignments are graded in line with our other master's programs and graded in the same kind of way as most master's programs in this country. So you don't get an ABC kind of grade. You get a spot mark, as we call it. You get a numbered grade. But the most important thing is those numbered marks sit within bands that are your important bands. And there are 3 levels of passing at master's level. There's a pass, a merit, and highest level is a distinction. So you'll be given a number, and that number will relate to one of those bands. So at the end of the course, you'll be able to say, well, I've got my PGCEi with merit, for example, which will indicate how strong your pass was. So pass, merit, distinction, but within those bands, there are different scores you can get, which will show you whether, for instance, it was a strong merit or a weaker merit. So you'll have a good sense of how you're getting on.
Okay, I know this program is 12 months. However, if I want to shorten it, can I take 2 modules simultaneously?
You can't really take 2 modules simultaneously, but you can, by negotiation, look at accelerating your progress if you wanted to. Having done the first module and got the measure of the program, if you felt like you could work more quickly and have deadlines that were set more quickly, then it may be possible through negotiation with your tutor to do that. So in principle, that's a possibility. What I'd say in practice, though, is that almost never happens. People find that the pacing is about right and the workload is about right. And taking modules simultaneously is a little difficult as well, because one module sort of builds on the next. So it has some prerequisite understanding that you're going to need to bring from module 1 into 2 and 2 into 3 and so on. But there's nothing really to stop you. If you wanted, while you were studying module 2, for example, you could be reading ahead into module 3, and you could be beginning some work informally on that, even without renegotiating those deadlines.
Okay, and I'm just going to reiterate once again, these workshops are not managed in any other country except for Ajman in this Middle Eastern area. Okay, so please ensure that you are able to fly into the UAE and undertake these workshops in Ajman. They will not be held in Qatar or Oman or in KSA. Okay. And one final question is, again, Dr. Rupert, are you the one that is going to be coming through in March? I would love you to be my tutor.
Well, thanks. That's nice to hear. Actually, I've got to disappoint you and say normally I don't work with the group that starts in March. I work with the groups that start in October every year, and we do our second workshops in March. But so the next cohort starting is probably not one that I'll be involved in. But the good news is I can tell you that I've got a fabulous colleague, Alison, who is the leader for that cohort, and she and her team of tutors, some of which work with me and in the other group as well, are absolutely great, and you've been very, very safe hands with her as well.
Hey, excellent. And yes, I will answer the very final question that a lot of you have asked. This particular webinar has been recorded, and we will be sending you the recording. So if you have missed out on anything or you've come late into the webinar, we will definitely be sending you the recording so you can actually listen to what was said. Okay, thank you everyone for attending. It was wonderful having you with us this evening. Fantastic questions. And again, Dr. Rupert, it was a great pleasure. And as Dr. Rupert has said, we are open now for applications for March. We have very limited places available in the UAE cohort. So I really do advise that you get those applications in before the 14th of December. Yeah. Thank you again, Dr. Rupert, and good evening to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Helen, and thanks everyone again for coming to the webinar tonight. I hope that's been useful, and good luck with your applications. It'd be great to see you in one of our cohorts in future.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.